Hello everybody, welcome to the second episode of Know Your Faculty here in the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Oklahoma State University. I am Deb Mishra, I am a faculty in this department and I am also currently serving as the graduate program coordinator. So this is the second week of us doing this, and today I am very happy to have one of my best friends in this department, Dr. Jaime Schussler, and she's going to tell us about herself, her hobbies, her educational journey, and give us some really good advice so that our current grad students as well as our future grad students can benefit from it. So let's go and talk to Dr. Schussler. Alright, let's welcome Dr. Jaime Schussler. Jaime, welcome to the interview series, and thank you for being the second guest on this thing, and I'm really appreciative, and we'll use this to I'll ask some questions and let's see what we can know about you.
Sounds great. Well, thanks so much for having me, Deb. I think this is such a great opportunity to get to know each other, as well as our students get a chance to be exposed to the department.
Absolutely. All right, let's get started. So we are going to have basically three segments with a couple of questions each. The first one is called your background. So we are going to start off with, why don't you please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you did your undergrad, your grad studies, what do you do in your free time, when did you join OSU and stuff like that?
Sure. So I will start with my studies. So I did my undergraduate at West Virginia University in Civil and Environmental Engineering.
So mountaineers, right?
Mountaineers, that's
okay.
right.
All right.
So I got my start in the Big 12 there. And then after undergrad, I had accepted a job, but I really started talking with a faculty member who I had a good connection with at Iowa State University. So I decided to go out there and pursue my master's, still within civil, environmental, and there also construction engineering. So stayed in the Big 12 for a little while longer before my advisor at the time actually moved on to Auburn University. Okay. So I wrapped up my master's and I moved on to Auburn University where I did my PhD. And so I started at OSU right after my PhD in August of 2022.
Okay. 1.5 years.
1.5 years,
okay.
But
right.
You know, this department has a way of bringing you in, and you just kind of feel like you've been here and you've been connected with the people forever. So that's a great thing. But you know, I love my work. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. In my free time, I love to be around the water. I've got my dog Max. He's on the Pete Pat Posse, so I get to bring him with me sometimes. He is a lot of fun. We love to go hiking. We love to be on the lake. So those are some of the fun things.
Nice, and we'll do something with Max later on for sure. So, okay, so mountaineers to Iowa State is what, cyclones or something? Cyclones, and then to tigers, Auburn, right? Okay. Okay, good. How about you tell our students what courses you're currently teaching, and what courses, like you like if you have any plans on offering new ones or something like that.
Sure. So right now we're in the spring semester, and spring's typically when I teach my undergraduate course. And so right now I'm teaching hydrology, which is a 3,000 level course. It's a lot of fun, basics and intro to hydrology. Coming up in the fall, I will be teaching stormwater management and green infrastructure, which, spoiler alert, is a lot to do with my research, but also a really fun class to teach. That's the graduate level, and we also use it as a senior elective. So we have a lot of fun. We get to go out in the field and do quite a bit of hands-on work and exploratory, whether that's around town or at some research labs nearby. So I love that class. I also teach an open channel flow hydraulics class at both the graduate and the senior level. So that's what I have coming up and what kind of stays on my docket.
Nice, nice. Okay. So that's a good way into your research. So a little bit, without going into a lot of details, what area of civil engineering, and in there, what do you play with usually?
Sure. So I work in the water resources engineering realm, and more specifically, I work in stormwater. Stormwater, very simply, is the water that reaches the Earth's surface. We're managing it a lot if it can't get infiltrated or evaporated. So we're coming up with management strategies. A lot of people will think about this as the drainage, like on the side of the road, or the stormwater inlets that you see maybe in your neighborhood. Now, what I do is just a little bit different than that. Sure, we start there. That's what we call gray infrastructure. But I also work in the space of green infrastructure or nature-based solutions. And so this is trying to emulate natural processes to get the stormwater back into its natural hydrological process or system. And so we do a lot of infiltration-based practices.
Is gray because concrete is gray? Is that
That's
what?
right.
Oh,
That's
okay.
right.
All
So
right.
we often say gray infrastructure, like concrete. Green infrastructure is things that's going to have more vegetation or plants. We do a lot with bioretention cells and rain gardens. The other big part of my research is working with stormwater management during development or during construction.
Okay.
Construction, we have to do it as civil engineers. So we have a lot of big infrastructure practices coming in, but we also need to manage that stormwater in a responsible way. We're disturbing the land from its natural state. We're exposing a lot of sediment. There's just a lot of things that we need to consider, because when it rains, if we have a lot of open dirt, that dirt's just going to get washed away and our grading goes down the drain. So I do quite a bit with erosion and sediment control and stormwater quality as well.
So from a layperson point of view, so if I'm a developer developing a neighborhood and stuff, would I need somebody like with that kind of background to do my management and retention ponds and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So I tell my students, especially at the undergraduate level, that really any part of civil engineering that you touch, you're going to need somebody like me or a water person around. No matter what, if you're working outside, we deal with the elements, we deal with rainfall. And so it's definitely something that you need to consider, whether that's in development or say you're putting a new road down. That's going to have runoff that we never had before. So you definitely need an expert. And we see that right now in civil engineering. We see that with the infrastructure bill. There's a lot of focus on stormwater, upgrading our stormwater system. So big focuses in stormwater right now.
Excellent. Yeah. That's so a lot of scope for students. So the last question in this segment is my personal favorite. So tell me something funny about yourself. It can be something weird that you do or something kind of a habit that you do that you find funny or a unique experience, whatever.
Sure. So I'll say something that people don't always expect from me is that I'm a pretty competitive person, and this comes in when I'm playing games. I play in a volleyball league here in Stillwater, and I just can't help it. I just get a little competitive. I don't know what it is. So that's something that I think people don't always expect when they
do
meet
like
me.
trash talk and stuff like that?
I don't trash talk, but I'm very invested in the outcome, and same. We love to play board games with our friends, and I get very invested in the outcome.
That's good. Yeah, I like that.
But a funny experience, and I'll share it about my graduate research.
Okay.
So I did a lot of work in construction stormwater during my master's degree, and I was doing some fields monitoring on an Iowa DOT site. And it had rained, there was a lot of sediment that deposited in a detention basin that I was monitoring. Well, my sampler tube for my water intake became beached. It was no longer in the pond, and so I had to go out and try to place this. Well, what happened is I took a step too far, and this deposited sediment actually acts as like quicksand.
Oh.
So I stepped in, and I told my advisor, I said, I really sunk into my research today.
Oh, nice.
Because I was up into my chest in sediment. I actually had to be rescued.
Was it scary?
It was pretty scary,
I
but
can bet. Okay.
it's funny looking back now.
Oh, yeah.
Pictures to tell.
Looking back, yes, but I'm sure it was scary. All right, next segment. So that's called career path. So we're going to trace a little bit of your career path, and with the focus on what your experience was or what made you take certain decisions so that the students can also identify. So the first question is, let's start from the very beginning. When did you decide to become a civil engineer, and how did that happen?
Sure. So this one is really funny to think back on because as a high school student, I really liked math. I was pretty good in my math and my physics classes. And so I was in this calculus class, and there were only 6 of us. And the other 5 all knew that they were going to be engineers. And I had no idea what I wanted to be. And I said, well, these are my friends. These are the people who excel at the things that I'm doing well at right now. So I guess I should be an engineer too. And when I was looking at the different types and going to WVU, I thought, well, maybe one day I'll want to be an architect. So I'll go into civil engineering first because we didn't have an architecture program in the state. And then maybe I'll go into architecture later. But that's what got me there. And then it's funny, I got in the mud and the water, and I stuck there.
That's pretty nice. I guess one example where peer pressure is a good thing.
Oh.
All those 5 people wanted to be, and you also wanted to be. That's good, right?
I think that'll be a theme throughout this interview. Is you got to surround yourself with good, like-minded people, because peer pressure has been a theme of my life, but it's always been in the positive sense.
That's good to know. How about graduate studies?
Yeah.
And PhD. I mean, that's another leap, right? Big one.
Sure. So this is another one that I really like to talk about, and I like to share this journey with students. I was a first-generation college student, and being a first-generation graduate student, there's a lot of things that you have to figure out. So I went to college. I was lucky enough to have some scholarship, but I was also working part-time to pay myself, or to have enough money to get through college. And so I thought, okay, well, after this, engineering surely gives you a good paying job. But then towards the end, I started having my professors and my friends talk about graduate school. And so I'm like, well, maybe graduate school would be a cool thing. But I didn't know all about research, this sort of thing. So I ended up doing a short study abroad, and with this I was doing a little bit of field work, actually with a team in France, and that was super cool exposure. There were some PhD students, and I was like, oh, this is what graduate research is. Maybe I could do it. So again, peer pressure comes up. I had 4 of my very best girlfriends. We were all in the engineering sorority at WVU. And the 4 people closest to me were all going to graduate school. And I thought, well, maybe I need to consider graduate school. So I started talking with different faculty, different advisors, and that's when my advisor shared that there were graduate research assistantships available. And I wasn't sure what that meant, but he shared with me that there's opportunities to have funding to go to graduate school with a stipend, and so that really helped, because it wasn't going to be more student loans or anything like that. So that is how it took me a little bit and a lot of exploring and talking to the right people to get to graduate school. But once I got there, I found the perfect person. My advisor, Dr. Perez, I owe so much to him. He did work in both construction and water resources, 2 of my biggest interests, so I thought that'd be great. And he was an awesome advisor, such a big influence on my life, which I think a lot of graduate students would say. Did great research in his lab at Iowa State, and then it was a no-brainer for me. He formed such a great team. He was such a good advisor that when he moved to Auburn and offered me a PhD position, I just wasn't done learning yet, and I thought there was still so much to soak in. I had finally got my feet under me as a researcher and learned that I could be productive in this space. So I was really excited, and it turned out to be a great opportunity.
Well, we are thankful. I am thankful West Virginia did not have an architecture program.
Right.
I don't know if they still have it or not, but we'll see. But after PhD, did you think about industry at all, or did you always know that you're going to teach and do research and stuff?
Sure. So like I said, as a first-generation college student and graduate student, I don't think you really think a PhD is in the cards for you. And so that's what I'll say. And I heard another professor say this, but sometimes the apple does fall far from the tree. And so, you kind of navigate this new space. And when Dr. Press first said to me, you'd be a really good PhD student, you should really think about this, it was taken aback. I have chills just because I never thought that was possible for me. Once I did, I think I was a lot like other doctoral students that you're like, oh, well, I'm going to go do research as a faculty member or at a national lab. And, you know, once I started and I realized what an impact my professors and my advisor made on my life, it was my goal then to become a professor. I thought, you know, I can have the same sort of impact on students, provide them these opportunities I never thought I'd have, and really develop people into research. And especially, I do a lot of applied research. So while I didn't think about myself directly going into the industry, we work a lot with the industry. I'm working with people at the DOT. I work with people at various different stormwater associations, Grand River Dam Authority. I mean, there's all sorts of industry partners that do what we do, and those partnerships are very, very natural in the stormwater space.
Absolutely. And I think what I would like to say is, from what you just said, it's important for students to realize that faculty does not necessarily mean that they're locking themselves inside a room and just doing work or something. They're interacting with people, doing applied research, working in the industry and stuff.
Exactly. I think especially when we think research, it's like your typical like chemistry lab with beakers and this sort of thing. And I mean, we do some stormwater quality. We bring stuff back to the lab, but really I'm out in the fields more than anything. We're in a hard hat and boots and all sorts of stuff. So, and my students know when they come into my group, we do field work. So if you expect to be in the comfort of heating and cooling all the time.
It doesn't work all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So we'll go to the next segment, and this is primarily advice to students. So the first question, it's going to hit close to home. It's almost like a personal question for you. So because I know a little bit about your background, and I know you were a quite superstar student in undergrad, graduate, and that's why Dr. Perez invited you and all of that happened. So what do you think? What is the secret behind being a good student? Is it more study time? Is it keeping away from distraction? Is it you said a very good thing is surrounded by like-minded people. I'm assuming that's going to be part of your answer. Is it better planning? Do you always plan your days? How does that work?
So I would definitely say, thinking back to my time as a student, was keeping good company. A lot of my friends were also engineers, and so the struggles we were going through some of those things together, but we knew when it was time to persevere and really, really buckle in. So I really do, and your parents might say it to you, mine always said it to me, but you are as good as the company you keep. And so keeping good people who would motivate me, that was a really, really big one. The other thing was just keeping my goals in mind. I think I was focused on that. So I always knew kind of where I wanted to be, at least for that stage of my life, but I stayed adaptable and I stayed flexible to opportunities. And there were things, that I probably wouldn't thought of that I would have enjoyed for myself, but I stayed open and I did explore those things. And so I think those are my top three. So one, keep good company and people that can get you through the hard parts, but also celebrate your successes and have the fun with you. Number two, just keeping those goals in mind. And yeah, it's easy to get hung up or caught up on other things, but keeping those goals in mind is a really good one. And then just staying flexible, staying adaptable, because you never know what opportunities are going to present themselves.
Okay, that's good. Let's do the next one. Is one of the objectives of this series is to give information to prospective students. So I am a student who is wanting to join Oklahoma State to work with Dr. Schussler. What qualities are you looking in me? What, according to you, is a great student? And you're like, yes, Deb is a great student, I'm going to hire him.
Yeah, so I'll say that a student who is adaptable and flexible to different projects and different environments. Like I said, we're out in the field a lot, sometimes in the hot, sometimes in the cold, sometimes in the raining. So having a student who's willing and excited to do that work, because willing is one thing, but really excited and can see the joy in that's another. So somebody who's definitely kind of willing to get their hands dirty or wet, that's going to be a big important one. The other thing I would just say is that They are a good teammate. I really put a big focus on having a good research group culture. And so, a lot of my students, when they income, I'll talk with them first, I'll have a conversation, but they'll also talk with my current students. And so making sure that I'm placing students in an environment that they can succeed and they have
And
that
enjoy,
cohort.
yeah. Right.
So I think, and of course, there are going to be those technical skills, things like technical writing and communication. I much prefer a student who can communicate with me and is talking with me often so that I know where they're at and we can problem solve together. So I think those are the big qualities. Now, once my students are here, I tell them we treat graduate research like a job. So, I want them here, regular work hours so that we can all work together. Mm-hmm. But then so that they also have the freedom to enjoy their lives after hours. It's very important. I told you, I play in a volleyball league. I have Max. I think that's a very important thing. So knowing that my graduate students have interest and excitement outside of work as well, I think that's a very important thing to be successful as a student.
We addressed that as well with Brian's interview in the first episode. So that actually leads very nicely to the next question, and I'm going to merge two parts of a question. So the first part is, do you think there is a difference in the lifestyle, or there may be a difference in the lifestyle of a student who knows exactly that I'm going to go into academia versus I'm going to go into the industry? I know that in academia we also work with industry and stuff. So the second part of my question is, I know that since joining you have been serving on a lot of faculty committees and stuff. So you have been looking at applications, interviewing candidates and stuff like that. So what do you see? What is going on these days? How are the candidates? Are they really strong? What are they working on? And so how do you merge those two and stuff?
Sure. So I think this is a really good question. And I'll say that the type of work we do, I think you just have to, you learn a lot of skills in the work that we do. Now, you might want to focus on some skills more so than others if you're going to go into industry as opposed to academia. You're going to learn things in my research like field sampling, lab analysis, manuscript writing, presentations, reporting, all of these things. But some of those are more important than others depending on the job that you're going to go after. So certainly if I have a student who tells me my goal is to go into academia, what should I do? What can I do to set myself apart? Some of the things I'm going to make sure that student does is that we're going to get a really good publishing record. We're going to make sure that we are on projects that are hypothesis driven, that make very good scientific publications so that we are contributing to the field of research in a scientific way. And that's not to say all of my students should publish something, but we will really try to spend the time and try to get those publications built up to be in good journals, those sorts of things. Because we are seeing that. We're seeing that with faculty candidates coming in. They're doing a great job publishing in really high journals, and so I want to make sure that I'm equipping my students with those skills as well. The other thing I would change between the two is probably what conferences that we focus on, because all of my students, I try to get them to at least one conference a year. Some of those are more industry driven, and so if there's a student who says, hey, I want to go into consulting, I want to work with some of these government agencies, well, I'm going to target their conferences so that they're interacting with those
networking and stuff, yeah.
Right, yeah. And we're going to be presenting, we'll probably try to be working more on tools that are things that they can use in the industry, whether that be learning a new modeling software, learning where more data sets exist and how they're used in the industry. So I think it's just marketing those skills. Some of the things in industry are looking more at certifications. There are a lot in stormwater, stormwater design, erosion and sediment control professionals. So that's one thing. If they're going to go into the industry, some of those certifications matter a bit more. So we would just really I try to consider the students' individual goals. Well, they all get a baseline of skill sets, but really try to tailor that resume or CV to what their job goals are.
Excellent. Okay. So that brings us to the last segment, and this is a very open-ended question. for our current students or prospective students, any advice you would like to leave them with or something?
Sure. So I'll say that graduate school goes by quickly. And when you're first starting, you can look at it and be like, oh, it might be 3, 4, 5 years until I get my PhD, or even 2 years until I get that master's. But just soak in every day and take in as much as you can. You're surrounded by a lot of great resources at a university. Within this department, we have a ton of great resources, but at OSU as a whole, even more. And so I think really spending the time to build connections, learning what you can, and just really, really soaking in that time and that development, because that's what I think grad school did the most for me. It taught me how to learn or how to be an independent researcher. And once I had those skills, I felt like I was ready to go, but I wouldn't rush it. I know sometimes in grad school it feels like, oh, my friends are working, they're doing other things, but I really think just taking it in and trying to enjoy it and realize what you're doing is you're going to have a big impact on society. We're going to get that out there. OSU, I think our department especially, does a really good job with outreach. So, I know the research that you do impacts pavement design and all sorts of things. And so, just like what we're doing, we have, especially in Oklahoma and the water future here, we can have such an impact on what's going to happen. And grad students are the central part of that. So just remembering you are a big piece of what we do, taking that in and using what resources, because it's going to pay you dividends once you graduate.
Okay, excellent. Well, Jaime, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to summarize what Dr. Schussler just said. Few things that I'm going to remember is always surround yourselves with like-minded people who are going to be positive influence for you. Second is soak it all in. You have great resources and stuff like that. And the third one is, try to sink into your research and stay there and stuff, and it will have a good impact. And that's how we're going to end. Thank you, Jaime, and thank you, everybody. We'll see you again. Go Bucks!